everyone, it's Jane. I hope you're having a fabulous week. I have a bunch of stamps sitting on my desk and I finally got around to making these amazing Altenew Hyacinth cards. I just fell in love with this stamp layering and it is so beautiful and so realistic. I did two different colors. I did purple and I did blue. And I have no idea if that's the color of hyacinths in the real world, but that's the color I wanted them in my card making world. So let's get started with the products. I'm going to be using the Build-A-Flower stamp set. Here it is right here, and it has a great layering guide inside so you know exactly what to do. The Stamp Market Plaid Stencil, and I will be adding a few other products to this as well. This Altenew Leafy Frame Die, these awesome Lawn Fawn double stitch rectangles. They don't cut out the card, they just put a great double stitch on it. The paper Smooches, I love this particular one. It's called Fab Frames. You'll see the stitching at the end. The great life-changing brushes. And then Altenew has some amazing inks that are actually made to layer together, so it takes the guesswork out of what you're trying to do. So I decided that I need to cut out my die cuts first for my hyacinths because the stems are a little wiggly, and if you stamp them first, you don't always get a good die cut. So I cut them out first, and I'm doing a multiple die cut here. I lay the stamp set on top, I cut it out, the die on top, I cut it out and put a lot of purple tape on there. And then I'm going to take my press and seal and I'm going to lay it on really good, make sure it's really smooth, and cut off the excess. This is how I always cut multiple die cuts. I will then layer the next piece of paper down below in the corner, making sure it's all lined up. And I didn't really need all of these negative spaces, but just in case my positive space got wrecked, or my initial negative space got wrecked, I wanted to make sure I had a couple of extra. These are all the ones that I cut. I cut 8 of each. I am putting a bunch of temporary adhesive on the back of this negative space. And here's the layering guide. It shows you how to do it. And just follow the guide and line it all up. My head will get in here a lot because I have to line it all up. And I'm putting my my die cut pieces into the negative space, and I'm laying the stamp on top. I realized after I looked at the layering guide that I need to do the green on the small stem first and the color on the large stem first. So I will be having a bunch of passes through. But I made a lot because if you're going to go to all this trouble and lay it all out, you might as well make a lot. As I said, my head is in this a lot and I apologize. So I'm going to do this for 8 of these. I'm going to do 4 blue ones and 4 lilac ones, and I'm starting with the lightest color first. Just popping it in there. This is a great way to stamp so many of your stamps, not just layering dies. I'm using the Lawn Fawn stamp chamois to clean it with my microfiber cloth. And before I stamp, I rub the stamp really well with my microfiber cloth to get the shiny off so that my stamp actually stamps properly. So now I'm going with the second layer here with a little bit darker color. And you will see one eventually, I do promise. And if you've been watching my videos, this one's a little bit slower than the others. There you go. Look at that beautiful second layer. It is absolutely fabulous. So again, I do this with 4 of the purple or the lilac ones and 4 of the blue ones. Look at that. Look how absolutely amazing that is. So now I'm going to be stamping my 3rd layer, and the detail of this, because you have a lot of outline, this is the darkest of the inks that I'm using. Look at that detail. That quick, fast detail that you really didn't get to see. I had to edit out my head. There you go. Beautiful. And here's the blue one. And now I'm laying down the green stem, and as you can see, I'm wiping it really hard with my stamp, with my microfiber cloth to get all the shine off. You'll see the change in the color of the stamp. And I am putting down the green layer for the larger bloom and the green layer for the small stem. And I'm doing it off to the side because I really can't see if I'm covering the stamp completely. And there you go. And I will do that for all of the large flowers, and I will do that all of the small stem. I did realize I made a mistake, and I'm using the lighter color green here, but the smaller stem, I'm using the wrong stamp. I used the second stamp and not the first one. So I decided to make the outline of the smaller bloom a different color, and that actually looks really good because Mother Nature, nothing's ever the same green anyhow. So it was a mistake that I was happy to have made. Here we are with our next layer of our stems, wiping it down really good, making sure I can get a really good impression. If you ever stamp and you have like little bubbles or dots, it's because your stamp needs some conditioning. You can use your hand, an eraser, a microfiber cloth. You can scrub it really clean. However you think you want to do it. I used to use an eraser, then I got tired of all the little eraser bits everywhere. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit. So now I'm turning it around because I finished all the large flowers, and I'm going to be working on just the small ones. But there is a little yellow dot. I'm using Fawn ink that goes in the center of those blooms, and I did double stamp that. Excuse me. And I will do that for every single one. Again, there's 8 of each. This did take some time, but I think that the results are highly worth it in the long run. I'm not a very good colorer, and I do not watercolor anything remotely close to a flower. I just do messy backgrounds. So I felt like I was really creating here and doing something really fun and exciting. And that negative space is really stuck down well with temporary adhesive. And you can see the different layers coming out on that smaller stem there. I'm holding it down so it doesn't pop up. And here's that other layer. Again, here we go. And it's very, very fun. It's very relaxing once you get it all lined up. And that part does take some time. So here are my 8 or 16 blooms, 8 large and 8 small. And do you see the detail? Look how amazing they look. So let's turn them into cards. This is the Stamp Market Plaid Stencil. I'm using some Altenew green ink with my life-changing brushes. I wiped a lot of the ink off on my cloth. I'm making sure I line this up really good because there's nothing worse than a plaid stamp that's not lined up. I'm doing a really light hand here and just a light coating of color. I'm going to now take the Lawn Fawn double stitched rectangle and just give this a little more interest on the edge. Now I'm laying out my blooms, trying to figure out where I want everything to go. I decided to pop my larger blooms up with some foam tape, and I have multiple sizes cut in my drawer or sticking on the side of my craft table. So I have big and small, and I'm sorry that's out of camera, but you can see that I am just putting some foam tape, and I'll do the exact same for the other one. The small stem, I just used a tape runner and laid that down with the tape runner. I'm going to do that right now. There's no need for all of the flowers to have some dimension. And then I'm going to lay that first one down after I drop it, of course. Put that sticky back on there. And then you can just cut the bottom of your stem off. You do not have to keep the whole thing on there. There you go. Just going to take my Teflon scissors, which I love because nothing sticks to them. And then I keep all of my cardstock on swatches like this. And when I'm not sure what color I want, I go through. I put a label on the back. That's all from Jennifer McGuire. And this is the Lawn Fawn Blue Jay. And I'm going to just put this right on top of that. I didn't use any foam or foam squares or anything. I'm just going to use tape runner and I'm going to adhere that. Now I decided we needed a sentiment. I don't always put sentiments on the outside, but this particular one I did. So I use that. I have a brand new Concord the 9th Lots to Say, which I love. So I'm using embossing buddy with Brutus Monroe embossing powder with white, and I heat emboss that, and I'm laying it on top, and I put a little foam on the outside and just tape runner on the middle and cut the edges off. And then I took my Wink Stella and I highlighted all of the flowers just a little bit, just to give it a little more highlight. And then I took my Dandelion Glossy Accents. I'm burping it over on the side to get all the air out, and I'm just going to give them a little squeeze and just highlight that yellow just a little bit more for a little more interest. That was the yellow that I had stamped on earlier with the last layer of that particular stamp. And here you are in a little close-up view. I'm going to turn to the side. You can see the little dimension. One thing I learned is you need to really put this aside and make sure that it dries. Otherwise, you're going to totally mess up your dots. This is the Leafy Frame Die from Altenew. I am layering 3 layers together. This card took a completely different direction. I colored it green, as you can see, and I'm laying it all out going, I'm not really sure I like that, but wouldn't this make a really cool shaker card? When I make shaker cards, I don't like to put liquid adhesive up around the acetate because it always oozes out and makes a big mess. So I'm using 1/8 inch score tape. As you can see, I took the white triangle in the upper left-hand corner, and rectangle, and I'm keeping that, and I drew a line or traced the interior of that so I knew where it was going to lay down. I put my my tape runner there. I love that Tombow tape runner. And then I'm going to put my flower on top, cut the bottom off, and make sure that's lined up right in the middle. Now this is where my camera goes completely wonky. I'm not really sure why. But I don't know if you can see, but laying on top of the flower are all of my sequins. I have my layers of leafy backdrop die, and I put 1/8 inch score tape behind it, and I put it all down, and there it goes. And I apologize for my lack of camera abilities. I'm really sorry. For my last and final card, I am taking that awesome stitching die from Paper Smooches, and I ran it through Nina 110 pound cardstock. I put a little micropore tape on it to hold that end down, and I'm just going in one hole and out the other, and in one hole and out the other. I have a lot of embroidery floss and pearl cotton. This is pearl cotton number 5. It's a thinner than number 3. And I just thought it would be so fun. And I just continued around the whole card until I got to the other side. And then I kind of lifted up that micropore tape, put my end behind it. As you can see right here, I'm kind of catching the ends. And then I'm going to cut all the extra off. And I like their micropore tape because it's white. And then I cut 2 more layers, and I layered them behind this, so I have 3 layers of this die, and this is how I get the holes out. Now sometimes it leaves a little scratch mark, but when you're putting stitching on top of it, it doesn't really matter. I put a heavy block on top to make sure it all stayed together, and here's my 3 layers. I'm putting my flower inside, trying to figure out, well, where do I want it to go? Pull it out, cut the end off, put a little glue on the bottom, And then I'm going to glue, and I always save my old cardstock and use them, as you can see here, for dies. Nobody sees it. Put that right on top, and this is an all-white card. I use Neenah 110 solar pound white again. Solar pound, 110 pound solar white. And I did not do any foam tape here because the frame was lifted up. I kind of eyeballed it where it was going to go. And then this one I wanted to come down a little bit, so I took my scissors and just cut off the end, kind of rounded a little bit so it matched the other side. And then I decided this one needed a sentiment. One of my cards does not have a sentiment on the outside. It has a sentiment on the inside. And for some crazy reason, that did not film either. I think I need to go back to school. What do you guys think? Anyhow, so I went through my stash. I found this Simon Says stamp, Tiny Words Encouragement. I bought all the Tiny Word stamps because they're so amazing. And I laid it out on my card, but before I stamped it, I wanted to make sure it was straight. So I grabbed a piece of scrap cardstock, stamped it on that first, and then I stamped it on the card on the left. So here they all are. Here's the first card with the stitching around it. It says "You are amazing" at the bottom. And you can see the different color in the leaves, and I actually love the fact that I made a mistake. No one will know except for you. This is the very first one with the plaid stencil in the back with a little bit of Wink of Stella on it. And this is the shaker card. And I think they came out really good. If you're a little afraid of using the layering stamp sets, please don't be. They're really not hard. If you follow the guide, it is really easy. You just got to take your time, get your head in there, and make some cards. Thanks.